being here. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I'm the second best. You know, all that good stuff. Jeff, first one here. Thanks, man. So, Drone Tech, what's up, man? Hey, if you want to call in, just let me know, Drone Tech. Be happy to have you on. We can just do it through Discord if you want, but if you're busy, that's fine too. So, I'll probably be doing streams tonight, tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. I'll still be doing my Saturday radio show. However, just to give everyone a heads up, I am taking vacation after that, and I won't. It'll be a vacation where I'm probably not streaming much. So just to let everyone know, I'm gonna take some time off here. Stuff to do, life stuff. So what's up, Ramon? Thanks for being here, man. So yeah, just to let everyone know, I'm on YouTube, DLive, Periscope, and Twitch right now. So please consider following me on different platforms because you never know when one of those platforms will beat me up. Is it going to be another 6 hour? No, because I'm going to be playing Call of Duty with some friends at like 10 o'clock. So I will definitely be done by 10. I've made that commitment. 6 hour streams are rough. I like that guy called in last night, though. The religion stuff, I got to be honest, I'm kind of uncomfortable talking about because I feel that it just isolates you from people. But, you know, I think I'm consistent. My beliefs I've been pretty open about, even though I don't talk about it often, which is just be a good person. I got there from being, I thought, Christ-like, looking at that as a model. But I don't care if you get there through being an atheist or you get there through being a Muslim or Jewish or whatever. I don't care. If you're a good person, you're a good person. That's it. So I don't feel strongly about the subject. I know a lot of people that watch me, if you're heavily Christian, you're going to disagree with me on that. That's fine. You know, so it's not something I like talking about often. But I think that I'm encouraged that I got to talk to him about that because that's something that he seemed to be really interested about. And it was a little unfair that we were talking about stuff that he knew less about before that. So fair enough that I was talking about something I knew less about. So he was a good sport about it. But none of that tonight. So tonight, last night we talked about COVID, we talked about the riots. Tonight it will be kind of more the same, though I wanted to focus on the media reaction and of Joe Biden's speech and kind of Joe Biden and what he said. So let's check out the comments. Yeah, sometimes it takes 6 hours. By the way, BPW, thanks for helping me out through that discussion. Kind of, you were posting some scripture there, and I think you understood what I was saying as someone who's probably understands more about religion than me. The point I was trying to get across. So, well, I think he's not a Christian scholar because he's an atheist, is why he wouldn't call himself a Christian scholar. Yeah, we talked about the guy shot in Portland last night. Don't worry, we'll talk about it again tonight. So, yeah. So let's get into that. So for those of you that missed, the other night I was staying up late and there was a Trump supporter that was shot by an Antifa person in Portland. It seems beyond debate now. My quick take on it is as follows. I think it's ridiculous how the media and the left is gaslighting. They're trying to say that this was somehow justified because of Rittenhouse, or that it was exactly the same as Rittenhouse, or this was somehow better than what Rittenhouse did. It wasn't as bad. That's absurd. Again, with all of these cases, I am always, and I sincerely mean this, I am always open to the fact that more evidence could come to light to make the situation look different. For example, in the case of Rittenhouse, although it seems like a clear-cut case of self-defense, what if video came out before, when he was being chased, that he shot at the guy that was chasing him before the guy chased him? That theoretically could happen. I don't see any evidence of that. I would say the chance of that is exceedingly low, seeing as how if there was video evidence of that, surely they would have been paid big bucks to get their hand on by the people in the media that want to paint, all Trump supporters as white supremacists that are out murdering people. But you see my point. I could say the same with this Antifa shooter. Theoretically, additional evidence could be prevented that puts this in a different light. But based on the available information we have from Rittenhouse and we have from this Antifa murderer, it seems as if one was a case of someone trying to flee a situation and shooting in self-defense, and the other was a case of hunting and killing someone for their political beliefs. If you listen to me, and again, I'm no expert, and again, I'm willing for more evidence to come out. I only have access to what we all have, what's been seen in public. And things could always change, so please take it with that caveat. But it sounds like two of them, Antifa people, said, we got one right here, there's a couple here. Get it out. And he says, where? And he's like, here, pat, pat. So it sounds like they shot someone in cold blood just for being a Trump supporter. It's horrific. And barely a blip about it on the media. Somehow it's all Trump's fault. This is always the case. Right winger runs over someone in Charlottesville. Media, Democrats go insane. It's Trump's America. It's all white supremacists. There are white supremacists under every corner. This is horrible. This is horrible. Trump needs to specifically condemn them every day, etc. Then Steve Scalise and Republicans get shot in a ball field by a Bernie supporter. All violence is bad. The right winger does something. Oh, it's Trump's fault. It's Trump's. Even like the synagogue shooter that specifically said he hated Trump because Trump was a fan of Israel. That's still Trump's fault. And then when an Antifa person murders someone, well, all violence is bad. What's up, Arcadia? Thanks for being here, man. So in a nutshell, that's what we talked about last night. We went through kind of the difference between the two shootings and the difference in the reaction. Now, I want to talk a little about the media's responsibility in all of this. If it wasn't for the academia and media, we would not have these riots and these people wouldn't be dead. They're the ones that are pushing this divisive rhetoric that this is a systemically racist, horrible country. And it's become so pervasive that it's dominating all of our institutions. Our corporations, most of them, our media, our academia, our entertainment industry, including sports industries, Silicon Valley. All of these are dominated by an ideology that believes in the idea of white guilt and white privilege, white fragility, whites being responsible for sins of their fathers. This country is just founded on racism. It's a horrible, evil, systemically racist country. Yet all of the systems agree with that. It'd be like this. It'd be like a group of fathers having like a fathers meeting and all come to the conclusion, like 10 fathers sitting around like, man, all of us fathers are just beating the crap out of our wives. We're all horrible fathers. Oh, but not us. Fathers are all horrible. Look what they do. They beat people. You're fathers. If you're complaining, not a good metaphor. I've had better. But you're complaining about the institutions being racist. You're the institutions. You're the people in positions of power there. It's so stupid. It's beyond belief. But they have drummed up the hysteria that's led to this. And again, I go back to, I talked about this last night. According to Rasmussen, over 50% of Democrats believe that Donald Trump said Nazis are good people. It's a lie. Now, take that in conjunction with what we were talking about back in 2016. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? I said no. You are allowed to use physical violence when you're defending yourself from immediate physical violence. Not because this person advocates a political system that years down the road could negatively affect me. If a Nazi says, I don't want black people in this country, no, you don't have the right to punch him. Sorry. If a Nazi says, I don't want black people in this country, and then starts swinging his fist at you because you're black, absolutely you have a right to deck him. Absolutely. But that's because you're facing immediate physical violence. Rittenhouse, it looks like, had the right to shoot because he was facing immediate physical violence. People were chasing him, beating him, drawing guns on him, shooting in the air. He had the right to defend himself. He would not have the right to just go in and start shooting Black Lives Matter people because he didn't like what they were saying. You do not have that right. That's the difference. But we were gaslit by all of the media, academia, the Democrats that said, oh no, you got to stand up to Nazis. If you didn't want to punch a Nazi, would you have just let Hitler go? And what did I say? And it wasn't just me, but most reasonable people. What did we say? What would happen? I made this as clear as day. I thought I made this clearer than anyone I saw in the country. Let's just say you're a regular Joe Schmo, right? You're a regular Joe, and you get all your news from CNN, and you listen to the Democrats, and you're going to university, and you're literally being told Donald Trump and all of his supporters are Nazis. They're all fascist Nazis. And then you're listening to more of the debate, and people are like, well, no, you shouldn't be able to just punch Nazis. Oh, so if you had a chance to stop Hitler, you wouldn't have? What's going through that person's brain then? They're like, wait a minute. These are literally Nazis like Hitler was? They just haven't got to the power that Hitler had yet, but they have the presidency? I got to do something. Well, that's why I say this isn't an outlier. Antifa's not an outlier to the Democratic Party. Antifa is the Democratic Party. It's exactly what they've been calling for. The fact that they would now act like, oh, we didn't see that coming. It's like my least favorite argument that I deal with all the time on here. Well, they couldn't foresee the consequences. It's just incompetence. Incompetence? They lit the match. 50% of the people believe that hoax. If you believe that your president got on television and said Nazis are great people, if you believe that, what would stop you from using violence? What would stop you? Now, you would think the media has an ethical responsibility to say, oh, we were wrong. We falsely edited that. But they won't. You would think that the presidential candidate for the Democrats, Joe Biden, would say, no, that wasn't the case. But no, he's repeating the hoax. That's the central plank of his platform. Trump does hate. That's what Wheeler did too. Trump's hateful. He's spreading hate because he said Nazis and white supremacists are good people. He did not. That's how we got in this situation, because the Democrats and the media wanted it. And then they went further. They lit the match, and then once the fire was burning and the riots started and people were being beaten, we've had over, 33, 34 now shot during these riots? The entire time, people like me, and more important than me, people like Trump, I don't think Trump handled it perfectly, but he was saying, let me send in the National Guard. Let's take care of this. No, that's what I was saying. We should take care of this with law enforcement. I don't want to see vigilante justice. I've said it, I was as clear as could be. I said this will inevitably lead to vigilante justice. This will lead to bad people on both sides arming themselves, escalating more and more until the bullets start flying. That's what's going to happen. And there will be good people that defend themselves, like it appears Rittenhouse was. Again, I make the prediction I made last night, the night before, and I've been making for months. Inevitably, if you don't allow law enforcement to do their job and you encourage a system where you say political violence is justified, there will inevitably be a Trump supporter that acts terribly and does something horrible. I don't think that was Rittenhouse. By all available evidence, that was a person legitimately using self-defense. Standing up for his community and using self-defense. However, I understand. I'm not an idiot. I know every ideology, every political party, every candidate has wackos that support them. Everyone. You can't control it. That's why I didn't criticize Bernie when one of his supporters shot Steve Scalise. Now, it's different now because they're fanning the flames. But it'll happen. It's still, they're waiting. They're praying. The Democrats are praying right now that a Trump supporter goes out and shoots someone in bad blood. They're praying because they realize they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. They miscalculated. They thought that the riots were good because here's what you don't understand. People are willing, when you shame people, when you scream racism, that's such an effective tool that it triggers a lapse in logic in so many Americans' brains. Racism, oh my God, racism. So they're willing to turn a blind eye for a month, for 2 months, to all the rioting and stuff. But now they're seeing it and it's in the suburbs and people are dying and being murdered and they're like, what is going on? How is this still going on? So they overplayed their hand. Now they're looking to get out. Now they're like, no, we're tough on law and order and it's Trump's fault. That's the argument that they're going to make. So inevitably, when a Trump supporter does something, I'm not saying it could be a false flag. It could not be. But it doesn't need to be a false flag because what they've done is they set the dominoes up. They set them up that made violence inevitable. When it's violence directed against Trump and his supporters, great. They don't care. When it's violence directed at inner city black communities, but they try to blame it on Trump, great. They don't care. But they'll care all of a sudden if it's violence directed towards a Democrat or a Black Lives Matter person. Oh my goodness. That'll be the end of the world. And that'll be the nonstop media coverage. When it happens, come back to this show and you can tell all your friends that are saying, see, it's all Trump supporters' fault. It is inevitable that extremists will take advantage of a system where you don't allow law enforcement to stop rioting. And so it's not Trump's fault. Trump would have stopped the dominoes being set up in the first place. He would have allowed the police and the National Guard to go in and stop the rioting. The Democrats encouraged it because they're praying that someone dies at the hands of a Trump supporter. They're praying for it. We didn't want a Trump supporter to be murdered like we saw. We didn't want that at all. We were talking about I myself, and I know many of you, were talking about how horrible these riots are when they were just primarily affecting inner city black communities that probably primarily vote Democrat. And we were still saying how horrible they were. It did not matter the political ideology of those that were being devastated by these riots. They needed to stop, period. But the Democrats allowed them to occur because they perceived it as harming Trump. And then the moment that their internal polling showed, uh-oh, it's backfiring on you, now they're pretending to care. Now listen, we could go back and forth. You could bring, supposedly I have someone that wants to debate me on Antifa not being a terrorist organization. We'll see if I can get that debate in the next couple days. If not, I'm on vacation, so it won't happen for a while. But we could go back and forth about, did the Democrats support the riots? How bad were the riots? Blah, 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 blah. We could talk about it. Here's 2 facts you need to know. That is the end of the argument. There is no way any Democrat is getting out of this argument. Period. 1, they did not mention the violence or the riots one time at their convention. Not once. Hundreds of people had been arrested by that point for violence and rioting. Anyone with half a brain could have turned on their TV and seen it. They didn't even say the riots aren't as bad as it seems. Most of the people were peaceful protest. They didn't even say that. They did not mention the violence. And so for them a week later, once their polling shows, uh-oh, this is becoming the biggest issue in the election and people are really unhappy with the Democrats' response. Now they're pretending, oh, we've cared about the riots all along. They did not, or they would have brought it up in their convention. Just like they didn't care about impeachment. That's why it wasn't brought up at their convention. They had their chance. It was pre-recorded. How many hours of coverage? They didn't have one person talk about impeachment or one person talk about the riots. Because they don't care about them. So now when they're out there saying, oh, no, we care, they're full of it. And second, and this is the most important point, words are cheap. Especially for politicians. They'll tell you anything they think you want to hear. What does their actions show? The actions show that Biden's campaign team members and Kamala Harris herself actively supported fundraising to raise bail for people that were arrested for rioting. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. I don't care what they try to... Oh, no, those were peaceful protesters. They were not. They were arrested for rioting. And you can't tell me that Kamala Harris and the Biden staffers looked at each one, went through each one's like, oh, okay, yeah, every single one of these people we're giving bail money to didn't do anything heinous. I read the Federalist article today showing the horrible crimes that they committed. Some of the people that received bail, thanks to Biden and Kamala Harris. They said they weren't rioters. They were peaceful. That's why they were bailing them out. They thought that the cops were unjust in arresting those people. And then those people went out and rioted more, most likely. So your words are cheap, Kamala and Biden. Oh, we're law and order. We think that looting and burning things... If I said that to you, if I came on here right now today and said, I condemn all violence, I think that looting and burning stuff's bad, and then you found out tonight that I went and I fundraised for Antifa and Black Lives Matter to bail out people that looted and burned stuff, would you take me seriously? Would you take me at my word? Or, since I'm a right-winger, let's do a little hypothetical here. Let's say that I came on after Charlottesville and said, I find it disgusting what this white nationalist did. He ran over that girl with the car. I find that disgusting. I hope he gets locked up. And then you find out I'm paying for his lawyer. Would you take me seriously? I don't think you would. Now, here's a better question. What if Trump had done that? Heck, let's even say that you're one of those Democrats that believe that Trump said that Nazis were good people, were fine people. Let's say you believe that. I would be furious if I believed that. So I understand you being furious. But what would you be more upset about? If Trump said that Nazis were good people and that was the end of it? Or if Trump said Nazis are bad people, but then personally tried to bail out Nazis? What do you think's worse? The cheap words? Or the fact that he lied, said that he thought they were bad, but then proceeded to use his own wealth or to get wealth to bail them out? It's unbelievable. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. I was just reading the chat. I need you guys to talk to my wife. She thinks I'm a schmuck, is what she thinks. A polite way of saying it on the channel. No, I appreciate it. I'm glad you like what I have to say. But that's it. That's the end of the argument. No, and this is true in real life. Again, I mean this sincerely. If you're watching and you're on the left, I sincerely mean this. I think that communism is a disgusting ideology. Absolutely do. I think it's murderous. I think it's power hungry. I think it's disgusting. I have more respect for a self-proclaimed communist that's being honest with me and engaged in a good faith debate. I could even be friends with that person and be like, I think your worldview is insane, but at least you're upfront about it. I enjoy that person more than someone that claims to agree with me, but they're just lying to my face because they're just trying to get something from me, or like a vote or money or, whatever. That hypocrisy is what outrages me the most. Your words are cheap. I'm not telling you anything groundbreaking that you don't know. But you should always, in your life, you should understand. People watch what you're doing. They watch how you behave. You can talk slick, but if your actions don't back up what you're saying, then no one cares. Look, Joe Biden has professional writers. He's still not the greatest speaker because I think he has health problems. I'm not even going to get it. I don't have to tell you. Any professional writer could come down and come up with a compelling speech that says, I condemn this violence. If you're donating or helping fundraise to break those people out of jail, to get them out on bail, then your words are lies. And if you're willing to lie about something so blatant, how can we believe anything that you're saying? Yeah, I would love to, Chris. I'm going to reach out to some people when I'm back on from vacation here. But so now, and this is the other part that I wanted to talk about this. Where's the media today? Where are they? Did you see Joe Biden's speech? I'm not going to run through the whole thing here, but let me paraphrase. Basically, the latter half of the speech was Trump's fault, Trump's fault, Trump's fault. Okay? The beginning of the speech was just kind of, I condemn all violence. I support peaceful protesting, but looting and burning and blah, 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 it's all bad. That's not peacefully protesting. Totally agree. Reasonable thing to say. Then he transitions into blaming Trump. And then he does have one line that's funny. He goes, do I look like someone who supports the type of guy that support violent socialists, blah, blah, blah? No, Joe, you look like the kind of guy that will say whatever they tell you to say and that you're not in control of anything. That's the kind of guy you look like, so I really don't care what you have to say here. Said they condemn violence from all sides. That's what they said. My question is this. Where is the media tonight? Where are they saying, why won't you condemn Antifa by name? Why won't you condemn Black Lives Matter by name? At least Antifa. I know the media is afraid to be called racist, so they're not going to tell the truth about what Black Lives Matter is. The group that was just chanting death to America in Sacramento, 700 of them 2 nights ago. They won't tell the truth about it. But Antifa, at least, they can't even do that. Now remember, the whole controversy, the good people on both sides thing, that was Trump's third speech. Trump gave 3 speeches after Charlottesville. Actually, he gave 2 speeches. Then he tried to give a press conference on the economy, and they just kept screaming at him about Charlottesville. In the first speech, he specifically condemned all forms of racism. He condemned the heinous act. In the second speech, he by name called out the neo-Nazis, KKK, and things like that. And then I believe it was the third speech. He said there were good people on both sides and bad people on both sides. The reason he said that was, 1, it was technically true. Second, he specifically said he wasn't talking about the Nazis and the KKK. He specifically said that. So at worst, even if you say, no, they were all Nazis, then you just think Trump was mistaken. Because when he says there were good people over there, but I'm not talking about the Nazis, you don't get to say, oh, Trump said the Nazis were good people. That's a lie. That's the opposite of the truth. But that's what over 50% of Democrats believe, thanks to the media. The reason Trump said there were good and bad people on both sides was he was tired of seeing the media pretend that Antifa were good guys and that Black Lives Matter, both of which showed up with weapons ready to fight. They were not good people. And Trump, probably like me, saw the writing on the wall of what was coming. if you give institutional support to violent groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, again, not everyone in Black Lives Matter is a violent terrorist, but the way the organization is being ran is as such. And you should be aware of that. If you're just saying, well, I support them because I care about the black community, that's a noble thing. You should be concerned about the black community and all communities. I don't begrudge you which one you want to focus on. But that the organization is Marxist and terrorist, and it literally is terrorist because it uses intimidation and violence to achieve political goals. That's the definition of terrorism. That's why Trump said it, because he saw if we don't condemn them, then they're going to take that as a sign of, sweet, we can go out and beat and murder people and it'll be totally cool because we're the good guys and everyone we're fighting are Nazis. And here we are. Trump supporter gets killed by an Antifa person that apparently was hunting them. All of Antifa that night and the following night cheer because they just killed a fascist Nazi. Hundreds of people cheering on the scene for the death of someone murdered in cold blood. By the way, they still haven't apprehended the murderer. What was that they said about the death of George Floyd? Oh, it took them several days to arrest him, blah, 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 blah. Oh, so I guess what? If you kill a Trump supporter, you don't face justice? So should we all take it to the streets? Of course, that's not what I want to see, though. I don't want to see that. But it just goes to show their hypocrisy. Anyways, that's why it was important to condemn the violence on both sides. Even though the bulk of him was specifically talking about racism, hatred, the girl that was murdered, and how terrible it was. Furthermore, before I get to this point that I'm going to make about the media, you can check my record of all the writings I did in places like Above Top Secret or on Facebook, though I didn't write there often, or the videos I did. I've repeatedly said I have no problem, none, with the strategy of when something heinous occurs and it's you're a politician and it was someone that's your supporter, of saying I condemn all violence. I don't have a problem with that at all. What I do have a problem is if you say when it's your supporter doing something, I condemn all violence, but when it's the other side supporter doing something, you say, how dare they condemn all violence? They have to specifically call out their side's violence. That's what I have a problem with. The hypocrisy of the whole thing. Now, to the point. The reason Trump had to give 3 speeches on Charlottesville was because the first speech that he gave, condemning the violence, condemning racism and hatred, saying we need to come together as a country to heal, it was a fine speech. After that speech, the media went ballistic. The Democrats went ballistic. Academia, the entertainment industry. Why? Trump hadn't said they were good people. He didn't make that comment yet. What was the media freaking out about? Do you remember? Because he didn't mention neo-Nazis and KKK by name. Why won't you say their name, Mr. Trump? Why won't you say their name, President Trump? Where's the media today? Where are they? I don't see one person in the mainstream media saying, that's odd. Joe Biden didn't call out Antifa. Joe Biden didn't call out Black Lives Matter. Now, granted, in the media's slight defense, Joe Biden doesn't take questions. He lives in a basement somewhere. So he goes out and gives 12-minute speeches and then crawls back into his hole like Punxsutawney Phil. But no one's clamoring for it. I wonder why. And you know why. Because they're not journalists. Are you surprised that the very people that gaslit this country into race riots by claiming that Trump said Nazis are good people aren't going to hold the same standard to the other side? Are you surprised? There are people that are completely lost. There are people that trust everything that the mainstream media says to them. There are people out there right now, I know some, there are people out there convinced these rioters are Trump supporters. They were convinced last week there were no rioters. And now they're convinced there have been rioters all along and they're all Trump supporters. Or if they're Democrats, it's still Trump's fault because the Democrats can't help themselves. They have to loot and riot because Trump's so terrible. They're convinced. Chris Murphy, the governor of New Jersey, put out a tweet that said Trump's intentionally killing people. That's what he's doing. He wants the riots. He wants people to die. The guy has from day one been saying, let me send in the National Guard. He even talked about sending in Marines. And the Democrats said, you're a dictator. You can't do that. Then when he sent the feds in, where was it? To Portland, to protect the federal building there, the federal courthouse, they said that was the reason for the riots. Serious question to anyone out there that hates Trump and is blaming him for this. What would you have had him done? Now I know what their answer is going to be. He shouldn't have said mean tweets. He shouldn't have talked mean. That's what they'll say. Okay. Other than that, what did you want him to do? The riots are happening. Trump didn't control the police that killed George Floyd. That was the Democrats. He didn't control the police that shot at Blake. That was the Democrats. Do you want him? Do you want Trump personally control of all these cities' police? Is that what we're advocating for? I bet not. If you think that he's a Russian stooge and he's a dictator, I bet you don't want him personally involved with local policing. Just a hunch. So what was he supposed to do? You didn't want him to send in the guard. So what? Now I want you to just put the shoe on the other foot for a minute. Let's say that Barack Obama's president. And let's say a bunch of Tea Party people say, we hate Obama, and they start burning down cities, and they start shooting Obama supporters, and they're hunting them and things like that. Would you really, as a Democrat, been like, well, this is Obama's America? The fact that so many conservatives are beating Democrats and burning down Democrat cities. It's Obama's fault. He's in charge. And what if Obama's saying, let me send in the National Guard to stop this? And the local governors and mayors are like, nah, you'd still say it was Obama's fault. That's what you're going to tell me. Pathetic. Unbelievable. You know you're lying. You know you are if that's your beliefs. You know it. By the way, yesterday it was not reported much, but I talked about it in my show. In LA, there was a Trump caravan that went through LA. Shots were fired at it, hit a tire. Then the police stormed the building, and the 3 people inside that the shooting was coming from barricaded themselves in. I haven't caught the end of that story to see what happened. We had knife attacks. How many attacks with people just physically beaten with fists, weapons, things like that? 1 second here. Sorry about that. Works up. Yeah, they threw rocks from an overpass. You're absolutely right. Stabbing people, hitting people, knocking people out, burning down buildings. All of this stuff. All of it's been going on. Still going on. No one cared. No one on the left in the media. They didn't care. It's mostly peaceful. The same people are incessant. Oh my God, did you see those Trump supporters shooting paintballs? This is Trump calling for vigilantism. Oh my God. Why won't Trump condemn his supporters? Their supporters have been beating people for 90 days. What's their logic? Mostly peaceful. Over 90% of the rioters are peaceful. Okay, then why are you focused on mean Trump supporters? The vast majority of Trump supporters never shot a paintball at someone. See how the double standard applies? And again, I'll make this point. Could there be Trump supporters that behave poorly? Yes. I'll call it out when I see it. But there's a difference. One, the difference is the Democrats are those responsible that set up, they wanted They don't want police. They want the police to let it go. It's all peaceful. They want community policing. This is what community policing looks like. Roving gangs shooting at each other. That's community policing. There you go. So the Democrats made this happen. They set up the dominoes, and everybody knew that had half a brain that this is what would occur. Secondly, I still have a standing challenge. I'm assuming there's at least one incident out there. There has to be a few. No one can find me. Someone on the left, show me the equivalent of a right-wing group surrounding people to prevent them from going to hear a left-wing speaker. Show me them mobbing people coming out of a Democratic speech. Show me them preventing, pulling fire alarms and screaming over left-wing speakers. Beating people to prevent them from going to conservative rallies. Show me that. What are we up to? 6, 7 dozen, if not more, of the opposite? In 2016, every single time you heard about Trump supporters clashing with others, every single time, I can't say that, every time I saw, which was the vast majority of times, was Trump people were having a gathering, they were mobbed from outside. Now that doesn't mean that everyone in that Trump gathering behaved properly. But that's what it was. Trump people trying to show their support for the president, them trying to be stopped from doing so. It was never the other way around. It was never Hillary Clinton supporters showing up for a rally and a bunch of Trump people coming to fight them. Never happened. Didn't happen once. And yet, the narrative was the exact opposite. Cypher says on DLive, and this is absolutely true, nothing can be solved when people think the fake boogeyman known as white nationalists are running rampant in this country. Yep. That's why I talk all the time about the problem with this critical race theory is, one, the real problems that are occurring in minority neighborhoods and in the country as a whole. They're not going to be solved by just shouting systemic white supremacy. It does nothing. That's not a real world solution. Because then when you're like, well, how do we dismantle this? Get rid of capitalism. It's not going to work. It's going to make things work worse for everyone. There are real world things we could do. We could try to improve policing. We could try to improve the relationships with police in the black community. We could try to increase education opportunities for the inner city. We could try to increase safety in the inner city to make sure that there's not so much violence and homicide. We could even have better education programs and less criminal sentences for people that are nonviolent drug offenders. That's all good stuff. We could talk about that. But you don't get to talk about that when the conversation is, we need to dismantle white supremacy. What does that mean? And the second thing it does is, I'll just show you. Let's just see a clip of what it does. Wait. Oh, don't tell me I lost this. Oh, wait. I gotta get my headphones. Want to see what happens? Want to see what happens when you tell a community of people that everyone based on their skin color is evil and racist and hates you? Want to see what happens? White privilege. It's white privilege. That's what that is. Doesn't that white guy know? He thought he was privileged walking down the sidewalk without getting smashed in the head with a brick. That's his privilege. Now, I'm not saying that every incident like that is motivated by race. But the facts don't lie. An individual black is 47 times more likely to commit violence against a white person than vice versa. That doesn't mean all blacks. That doesn't mean the blacks in the suburbs and the rural communities. It's mostly inner city. I'm not making a genetic argument here. But you can't tell me. Oh, and by the way, when you hear all these statistics about, oh, right-wing terrorism, did you know that almost every incident that's considered a hate crime of a white person affecting a black person is considered right-wing terrorism? Regardless of what their political motivation is, we call that right-wing terrorism. But we don't call when black people attack white people left-wing terrorism, do we? No! So we see that situations like this occur. What do you expect? What do you expect? It's just like I said before. You're a member of the black community. You're born. You're told you're probably in a terrible situation if you're born in the inner city. Just on average, even if you have a good single parent, you're probably in a single parent household. Let's say your mom's awesome. She's working 2 jobs, trying to do the right thing, but she can't be there for you all the time. You don't have a male role model. You go to school and try to learn, and you're picked on for trying to learn. And you're told from day one, white America hates you. This country's systemically racist. You'll never achieve anything because of so much racism. Nothing you do is your fault because of racism. White people are evil. They owned your ancestors. They owe you. They owe you reparations. They're responsible for the sins of their forefathers. What do you expect to happen? What do you think's going to happen? Michelle Obama just wrote 3 days ago that one time she was in an ice cream store and was cut in line by a white woman, and thus white supremacy. I too have been cut in line by a white woman. Huh. Does that prove white supremacists were out to get me? I assume Joseph Simic is being sarcastic. It says, wow, you just debunked white supremacy. Congrats. Let me be clear. There are white supremacists and black supremacists and Asian supremacists and Hispanic supremacists, etc., etc. It exists and will always exist. But what we see happening is, though the numbers are getting smaller and smaller, and they're getting less and less power. We had one person, what was his name, Steve King, that said, I don't see what the problem with the word white nationalist is. Now, it could have just been him being an idiot, but let's assume not. Let's assume that he was dog whistling or actually endorsing white nationalists. Okay, he was shamed out. Every other Republican condemned him, censured him. Meanwhile, black supremacists are doing the funeral at George Floyd, doing security at the funeral. Covered by every network, no one said a word about it. The pastor went on there and said, I'd like to thank the Nation of Islam for being here doing security. You know, that Nation of Islam. They called Jews termites, their leader, Louis Farrakhan, 2 weeks before the synagogue shooter. That have ramped up by huge percentages the amount of anti-Semitic attacks in New York. That want a black nation state and want no whites or people of other colors to live there. You know, black nationalists, black supremacists. Well, their leader's getting pictures with the Congressional Black Caucus and Barack Obama. Huh. By the way, the white, just in case you're worried, Richard Spencer, you know, kind of the biggest white nationalist in the country, who's he endorsing for president? Oh yeah, Joe Biden. Which network's interviewing him, giving his voices airtime? Oh yeah, CNN. Strange, huh? Like I've been telling you, the best friend to Black Lives Matter, the best friend to black supremacists are white supremacists. They love each other. It's like the Yankees and the Red Sox. Yeah, they hate each other on the field of battle, but they're all slapping backs and having beers afterwards because they know that they're driving up each other's power. The more black supremacists you have, the more white supremacists can recruit, and vice versa. They both want segregation. They both want to view the world completely through the lens of race. They both are the same type of crybabies that blame everything on their race. They're best friends. Is it any wonder that Richard Spencer's voting for Joe Biden? Weird though. I don't remember like when white supremacists said that about Trump, like David Duke. Oh my God. They asked Trump that every single time. No one's asked Joe Biden a question about it. Of course, they haven't asked Joe Biden any questions, so I guess that's understandable. What's up, Pete the Patriot? Thanks for being here, man. And let me tell you a story, right? Like, After Charlottesville, there was this argument like there are white supremacists under every bed. I don't see them. They exist. There used to be a KKK chapter in Punxsutawney, where the groundhog is for Groundhog's Day. It's right up the road from me. They were laughed at. I remember one time they tried to do a rally in Brookville, which is a town just down the way here. And like 6 of them showed up in the courthouse, which they got a permit. Okay. So they show up in their ridiculous robes to speak at the courthouse. And in this town that I'm guessing is 99% white, rural, little, broke town, there were probably 100 people on the sidewalk screaming at them from the other side. Get out of our town. And that's supposed to be flyover country. Trump supporters, 10-toothed racist rubes trying to keep the brown horde out, as CNN tells us. There they are, screaming at the KKK. No one takes them serious. Now, that doesn't mean they can't inflict harm. But they have no political power at all. None. Even just remotely, like if you get interviewed by a blog that interviews someone in the KKK, that taints you as a politician. You'd have to come out and be like, oh my God, no. But black supremacists, no problem. No problem at all. This footage, if this was a white guy approaching a black guy, smacking him in the head with a brick, while a bunch of white people sit around laughing about it, there'd be riots. But just another day. No problem. Do we forget that earlier? Now, I don't know if this is true, but what the police said was alleged was that we had a white woman that was shot and killed over an argument of saying all lives matter. We forgot about that. Imagine if that story was the reverse. A bunch of Trump supporters arguing with a bunch of Black Lives Matter supporters, and they say Black Lives Matter. Bam! Imagine how that news story would have went. Imagine if a Trump supporter was at a Trump rally and shot and killed 5 police officers. What do you think the nation's news would look like then? But when a Black Lives Matter supporter did it and said he wanted to kill white people and cops. Now, I'm not playing the woe is me as a white person card. That's not what I'm saying. Because the truth is, the vast majority of black people and Hispanic people and white people and Asian people and Jewish people, we all just want to get along. We might have little things, like people believe in stereotypes and stuff, but overall, people are cool. They don't care about your skin color. The vast majority of people of all colors don't really care about that stuff. But people that are in institutional power do care about it. And why do they care about it? Because they know it causes division. And then they could continue to screw over working class Americans for another 50 years while they get insanely rich and enrich our enemies like China. Your dollar buys less and less, and you have to work a second job, and your wife has to work a second job, and your kid's education that's paid through your taxes gets worse and worse every single year. Your kid will probably have to go fight and die in some foreign war that makes no sense, that just benefits the same elite people. And instead of all of us, whatever our skin color or sexual preferences or religious preferences are, all of us that are getting screwed over, instead of us coming together and going, why are we voting for these people? Why are we supporting corporations that want to cause division like this, that are actively working with the CCP in China, that are interning Uyghur Muslims and treating their people like crap? Devastating the people of Hong Kong. Why are we supporting this? Why are our tax dollars going to universities that are teaching our kids less and less, except to indoctrinate them to hate the country and create violent extremists? Why? Not only are they creating violent extremists, but I have to pay for it with my tax dollars. Oh, and now they're not even teaching kids. They're still taking the same tuition, and they're sending kids home. Oh, COVID. Sorry, we can't teach you. Get online. Check out a YouTube video. It'll tell you what to learn. But give us your money. Then we have to listen to the universities be like, it's a shame how kids are in student debt. You know, we need the federal government, like Bernie's plan, to pay for kids' tuition. Of course, that's what the universities think. They're snake oil salesmen that have been giving our kids no product of worth for the past 30 years and charging them exponentially more every year. Then they pretend they care about students that are in perpetual debt. They're the ones causing it. It's like a drug dealer increasing the price every week. And then telling the person buying the drugs, like, damn, it's a shame. Can you believe what Trump's doing? Price of these drugs going through the roof. Anyways, check out this new yacht I got. And we have to pretend like these universities that are all ran by left-wing, virtue signaling, patriarchy denying, critical race theory, intersectionality, cultural Marxist scumbags, we have to pretend that they're moral superiors that are getting rich? Thanks, Cass. I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. Right, Stuart. That's exactly right. KKK rally, about 5 people attended in the area you were at. They're out there. They'll always be out there. They will. I said, I've been bringing stuff like this up forever. You remember, like, way back when was it Charlottesville or Steve King? I think it was Steve King. And the Democrats were like, oh, he said white nationalist. We need the Republicans to censor him. So the Republicans put forth a bill criticizing Representative King, and we're like, white supremacy has no place, blah, 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 blah. Then, remember, was it Ilhan Omar? I think it was Omar, was supposedly saying things that were anti-Semitic. Now, I believe that Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite. I, however, did not jump on the bandwagon of assuming what she said was anti-Semitic when she said AIPAC was all about the Benjamins. To me, I thought she was saying that AIPAC spent way too much money lobbying, something that I tend to agree with. Even though I defend Israel a lot, I'm one of the rare people that thinks sometimes Israel right, sometimes they're wrong. I think that we're way too allied with them, and it gets us into a bunch of foreign wars we shouldn't have. But they're also maligned by the international community unfairly, because a lot of times they're just protecting themselves from Islamic extremists. It's complicated. It's not one side's always right and the other side's always wrong. It seems to piss off people on both sides, though, when I say that. Anyways, she was accused of anti-Semitism. And remember, the Democrats then posted a bill. And I was the only person in the country that I heard say this. The only one. I didn't hear one, not even Cernovich or Shapiro, none of them. I didn't hear them say this. Go back and read that bill that the Democrats pushed, that they pushed through. It condemns all hate. So when it was the Republicans, they said you have to condemn Steve King and white supremacy. When it was the Democrats, they said we condemn all hate. Now, remember, the reason they're doing this is one of their own was accused of anti-Semitism. So then they start to go off. They're like, we condemn when white supremacists shot up a synagogue. We condemn when white people did this. We condemn when white people did that. We condemn when white people did this. And it was everything. We condemn white people being violent against Sikhs. We condemn violence against gays. We condemn violence against women. We condemn violence against the black community and hatred. Every group you could think of, except they didn't say Christians. They didn't say white. They didn't say men. Now, why would you do that? How hard is it to just give a statement, even if you're just trying to cover up to say, all racism, all bigotry is bad, period? How hard is it to say that? But you're going to be like, all bigotry is bad. Let me give you some lists. And we're just going to conspicuously leave out exactly what we were accused of, which was a Democrat being anti-Semitic. They didn't say that. Instead, they twisted it to, oh, we're going to dog whistle to white supremacy. That's what we're going to specifically condemn. No one said a word, though. Not even conservatives. Same thing. You remember this? I talked about this a month ago. You know who Nick Cannon is? He's like an actor or something. I used to know him from like Nickelodeon or something. But anyways, Nick Cannon was preaching a bunch of Louis Farrakhan black supremacy nonsense about melanin and how white people are savages and like animals and blah, 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 blah. And that blacks are the real Jews. Black Hebrew Israelite crap. You know, those adult racists that CNN and all the news networks defended when they were yelling at the Covington kids. That group. Nick Cannon comes out and he says all this stuff. What was the universal condemnation of Nick Cannon on the right? What? Almost everyone. What were they saying? What did Nick Cannon say that was so wrong? Go back and look. Go ahead. Go to Twitter. Look up your favorite conservative, with the exception of a handful, that were criticizing this. What was the criticism that they made? You know what it was? The criticism was Nick Cannon's an anti-Semite. He said anti-Semitic things. That's what the criticism was, which is true. He did say anti-Semitic things. But the vast bulk of his speech was about how terrible white people are. And no one said a word. I've told you stories about being in the debate community. I walk in. Whiteness is evil. Reject your whiteness. Forfeit the round because you're white. You shouldn't live because you're white. You indoctrinate enough people with that, and it starts to come to fruition. And they might not say, I hit this guy in the head with a brick because people told me that white people were racist. They might not say that. If they're smart, they're not going to. So they just say, I don't know, I'm poor. I needed money. He called me the N-word. Isn't that what they said about the guy in Macy's? When the black guy was beating the crap out of that white guy, he said the N-word. I'm not saying this to be a victim. What I'm telling you is it's causing hatred and division. That's what I'm telling you. I'm also telling you, most black people aren't like that. Most white people aren't like that. Most Asian people aren't like that. Most women aren't like that. Most men aren't like that. Most don't want to divide us based on color and stuff. Even if they're like that publicly with what they're saying on Facebook, most people, even when they're saying it, when you meet them in real life, they're not behaving in that way. They're not treating people with contempt based on their skin color because of white privilege. And they have white friends. They just think their white friends are the good ones. So even they understand that it's nonsense. And actually, if you really want to be right down with it, I actually think that one of the reasons you see a bump in Trump's number is, I honestly believe this. The majority of people that believe this critical race theory crap are white. So any racist out there that's white and wants to say, look what black people are doing with their hatred of white, there are more white people that hate white people than black people, I think. It's not the skin color, it's the ideology that's the problem. But that's the problem. That's why I have so much of a problem with the whole white privilege thing. And everyone always says, no, that's not how I mean it. So I argued with people on Facebook about this. And here was the best response I got. White privilege is knowing. It doesn't mean that you'll never go through hard times or that you can't be underprivileged. It means that your skin color will never be detrimental to you in this country. Your skin color will never be detrimental to you in this country. If you're white, your skin color will never be detrimental to you in this country. Nothing bad will happen to you because your skin color is white. You see? Nothing bad. You'll never have that situation arise. You can't be racist to white people. Is that what you would tell that man? Well, you got bricked in the head. Maybe you'll be in a coma. Maybe you won't make it. But at least you're white. You got that white privilege. But the media needs to foster that boogeyman. That's what it's about. Which is fine. If you want to play that game, if you want to be in the media and you want for the clicks or for, the views, and you say, we're going to hold Trump's feet to the fire. Why didn't you specifically call out this organization by name? Fine. You're not going to do that when the Democrats have the same situation? That's all I'm asking is a little consistency. I think it's a scummy thing to do. You want to be the type of journalistic outlet that says if an extremist says he's voting for you, then you have to specifically ask the politician what they think of that extremist? Fine. But do it on both sides. And they don't. They're causing this division intentionally. In the media, in the corporations, in academia, in Silicon Valley. They suspended Cassandra Fairbanks for 12 hours on Twitter for saying Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do anything wrong, yet the platform allows Antifa and other hate organizations on. Of course, whites are not monolithic. Neither are blacks. Neither are Hispanics. And you can see how it could start with good intentions. Here's the truth. The majority of people, regardless of your skin color, are good people. Right? And it's like just say this. Take skin color, gender, or anything out of it. This situation's probably true for the majority of people. If I came up to you, whatever your skin color, religion, doesn't matter, and I say, hey, I just want to let you know, honestly, like, it's not a big deal, but when you said that the other day, you hurt my feelings. Most people, if I'm honest, and if I'm not coming up like, hey, screw you, you hurt my, if I'm coming up to you like that politely, like, you kind of hurt my feelings when you said that. Most people would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Or I was just joking, I'm sorry if that affected you. That's how most people are. They kind of have that type of, that's the best way I could put it. That's how most people are, right? If you go up to people and you say, hey, I just want to let you know, the people that were your ancestors did some really crappy things. Most people are like, ah, oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible. Now, I'm a little different. I see them like, okay, so what's the implication? Why are you bringing this up? Just for historical context? Fine. Or are you trying to say that that means that we have to act some way now? Because that's ridiculous. I do not believe in the idea of making people pay a penance for the sins of their fathers. Don't believe in it. But fine. So it starts off with good intentions. You're like, oh, okay, you're right. Yeah, there are things that happened in the past that deserve recognition. Okay, most people think that. And it's like, well, those people were your ancestors. Well, I feel bad about that. Is there anything I can do? That's how most people are. Yeah, actually, there are some things you can do. You need to be an ally to us. Oh, what's that look like? Well, you have to acknowledge that you're evil, or that you're privileged, or that you're fragile. You have to do that. Okay, I guess I could do that. And you have to condemn other white people as the same. Okay. And that means that people can't be racist against white people. Okay. And sadly, that means if you're worried about protecting your families from criminals, that's white privilege. Oh, okay. And if you're upset that people are burning down cities and things like that and beating people for their skin color, that's also white privilege. You can't be upset about that. In fact, as NPR said the other day, using the term riot is actually a racist term. Okay. Now look where you've gone. You started with good intentions. And now look, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, we just have to turn a blind eye to the riots. We have to turn a blind eye when we see obviously racist or prejudicial things being done to certain groups because we assume those groups are privileged, and so surely something bigoted or prejudicial can't happen to them. We have to have courses after courses after courses that talk about the evils of whiteness and the evils of the patriarchy. And at first it didn't seem like a big deal. Oh, okay. Fair enough. And now we're to the point where we have people, because, you know, I talked about this a while ago. Yeah, Tigger, we're talking about that in Portland, the Trump supporter. That was what my show yesterday and largely today was about. So I talked about this a while ago. I was reading this Twitter thread from Brett Weinstein. And he was talking about the Korean War. And how the North Korean prisoner camps were brutal, right? They were known to be brutal. But their allies, the Chinese government, their camps were ran much differently. So let me tell you this story, and then I'll liken it to what happened. This is in a nutshell, and I'm not a historical expert, but this is basically what the thread was talking about. They interviewed a bunch of soldiers and stuff that got out after the Korean War that were stationed in Chinese camps, and they said they were ridiculously polite to the soldiers. It wasn't like the North Koreans, right? So they're prisoners, but it wasn't harsh. They weren't like being beaten every day or something like that. And so they got meager rations and what you would expect in a prison camp, prisoner of war camp. What the Chinese would do would be they would have essay contests. And they would say, there will be a prize to whoever writes the best essay. And at first, the essays would just be about nothing. It, like, you know, tell us your favorite memory of, you know, an animal in the wild. Stuff like that. But then it started to change, just ever so slightly. They'd say, write an essay about one thing you'd like to see improved in the United States. Okay, that doesn't seem so bad. And then it would transition from that eventually to, what's one thing you think's better in China than the United States? Okay. And then all of a sudden, after those gradual changes, and by the way, the rewards they gave, it wasn't huge. It wasn't like you got out of prison or you got your own, room and bed. It would be like a small bag of rice. And that was intentional. Because they didn't want the Americans to have the excuse of, well, the reason I did this was because the reward that was offered to me or the punishment that was suggested to me was so harsh that, of course, any reasonable person would do this. It was just something small. And what they found out was every incremental step that you force, and it was important to make them write it down, not just to say it, but to write it down. And psychologically, what they found was when the American prisoners of war would write this down, what ended up happening was they ended up changing their personality to match the words that they had written. So they started to become critical of America. That's how it started by them writing it down. It was like, this is harmless, write it down. Then they started backing up those words. Yeah, America is bad. I was right. They don't want to admit what they written was wrong. They don't want to admit that they had a moment of weakness. So they changed their worldview. That's exactly what we see happening right now. It started off with, yeah, we can talk about the history of this. Of course, it makes sense. To now, we literally have all of these institutions dominated by the idea that white people are inferior. And not inferior like genetically or anything like that, though that's what Nick Cannon's saying, but inferior morality-wise. White people are responsible for slavery. We need to reject the Enlightenment because it was made by white people. Don't believe me? Let's just take a couple of things I found from today. Black man stabs random white man in AutoZone because he felt the need to kill a white male. Didn't hear much about that, did you? British Library's chief librarian, quote, said racism is the creation of white people. Priest asked congregation to condemn their white privilege at St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church. Seattle Black Lives Matter chants, who do we protect? Black criminals. Thought I had more, but that's okay. And we just accept this. You would never accept this crap the opposite way. So we live in this society where white people are horrible. They're rampant racists. They're beating blacks on the street. White cops are murdering blacks just for sport. White people, their racism so bad. Black people, they're frightened to leave the house. Only the statistics show the exact opposite. First, it shows that most crime is intra-racial, meaning it occurs within races. So if you're a white person and you're going to have a violent crime committed against you, guess what the person's most likely going to look like? They're probably going to be white. And that's certainly true if you're black. However, an individual, if you want to talk about interracial crime statistics, a black person is 48 times more likely, according to the 2018 Bureau of Justice Statistics, 48 times more likely to commit a violent crime against a white than vice versa. 48 times more likely. 48 times. In fact, there was as much black on white crime as there was total black crime where they were the victims. It was like 500,000 incidents. Blacks were the only race specifically signified out that were more likely to be the perpetrator of a violent crime than a victim. With whites, it was like 0.9 or 0.8. With Hispanics, it was like 0.9. With Asians, it was like 0.7. With blacks, they were 2 times more likely to be a perpetrator than a victim. So every one time a black was a victim of violent crime, they were arrested twice for being the perpetrator of a violent crime. Now, these stats are kind of garbage, though, and I'll tell you why. Because the vast majority of this is just in these inner cities. This isn't really true of black people in the suburbs, black people in rural areas. The numbers are way down. So it's almost unfair to them. The truth is, a black person in rural America, they're like the averages of a lot of the things that we look at, like poverty, criminal records and things like that, are very close to the average white person that lives in rural America. So it is unique to the inner city. It's when you have so much poverty stacked upon each other in these high density areas. Now, I don't particularly want to talk about these statistics because there are white supremacists that take these and say, see, we don't want blacks in our neighborhood. Citing the stat doesn't make you a racist. Using the stat to say you don't want blacks around does make you a racist. However, the reason I bring this up is the narrative that we're being given, that, oh, this country, it's just a bunch of white people destroying black people, is a lie. That's a lie. Yeah, I'm for the wall. Oh, absolutely right, Siffer. That's always the case with the cultural Marxists. Siffer says the Marxists and left don't give a crap about open market slavery that exists in the world today. Of course they don't. Why? Because those groups are oppressors. This has to do with cultural Marxism and cultural relativism. See, the intersectionalists, the Marxists, they're mostly postmodernists, so they don't actually believe in truth. They believe that everything's a power struggle. So they just want to separate you into groups. So the original Marxism was the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. But now they've realized, why just do it with economics? Do it with skin color, do it with gender, do it with sexual preference, do it with religion, do it with height, do it with ability, do it with everything. You could break it and say, you're not an individual, you're just a collection of groups. And some of those groups are oppressors and the rest are oppressed. And so they don't care about slavery in Islamic-dominated countries, Sharia law countries. They don't care about that. Why? Because Islam is oppressed in the United States, according to them. And so therefore, the actual heinous slavery, the actual heinous actions towards women that's occurring around the world, they don't care at all about. They don't care. It's how LeBron James could have a personal relationship getting personally wealthy from the Chinese Communist government and all of the heinous things they're doing, including in Hong Kong, including with internment camps of Uyghur Muslims, etc. He's involved in a personal relationship making hundreds of millions of dollars through them and companies like Nike that use sweatshops in China. Yet he doesn't see any personal responsibility when he says, I refuse to condemn those horrible actions. But he'll crap on the United States. If he wanted to crap on the United States, at the very least he could say what China's doing is horrendous as well. But he can't do that for two reasons. One, because China's victims, because they're not the United States. And second, money. Sweet, sweet money. Words are cheap, baby. Bashing the U.S. is popular. No problem. On that note, I want to talk to you about a comedian I like, Jim Gaffigan, or liked. Jim Gaffigan was this guy, his stuff was all like it was PG, which I like. I listen to vulgar comedy, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to see someone who's good that doesn't have to swear and stuff a lot. So Jim Gaffigan came out and just has a bad case of TDS, and he came out and he's getting hundreds of thousands of likes on his tweets just being like, Trump's terrible, blah, 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 Trump supporters are all terrible, blah, 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 blah. On Twitch, Decent Central Alyssa says, hi. Oh, never mind, you're a conservative, you're dumb. Bye. That basically sums up so many people on the left right now. Hi. Oh, you disagree with me, so you're stupid. Goodbye. Good stuff. Anyway, so that's who Jim Gaffigan was. And there was this, oh, he's so brave. He's jeopardizing his career. He's not. And I'll tell you a story after this. But this is Josh Denny on Twitter. He was an actor or a comedian. And I just want to read his thread because it sums up my feelings perfectly on this. I'll go through it fast. He says, I've always liked Jim Gaffigan. Never met him. Don't agree with everything he said in his rant this past week, but I'll defend his right to say it. I agree totally. Here's my problem with what happened, though. And I'm going to tweet my thoughts, so strap in. There's this weird sentiment that what he did was a risk. That somehow he hurt his career, which isn't true or possible. And that what he did was brave or difficult for anyone to do. I find myself angered that anyone sees it this way. There is no persecution for someone espousing the views that Jim shared, which were anti-Trump views. Sure, you'll see a bunch of nobodies or bots or fringe right-wing people denouncing their fandom, but overall you'll see overwhelming support from celebrities, tastemakers all over the industry. The whole post on his Facebook page makes me sick, because these are the stories that lead to the narrative that cancel culture isn't real. People use examples when highly successful celebrities step on a ledge to lose a few fans for a mostly widely accepted point of view. Anyone could step on a ledge, say something that's widely agreed upon, and pretend that it's a risk and be lauded as a hero. And guess what? I'm fine with that. But some of us lose everything trying to do the same thing. Standing up for what we believe in, for what we think is right. And we're not millionaires. And we're not saying the popular thing. Some of us just believe that all racism is bad. And that we have to stop allowing it to be directed at white people like that's progress. It's not. It's just tribal disgust turned on its head. It's an eye for an eye treatment. It's not progress. Yet when people like myself in 2018 or Terry Crews say unpopular or risky things to get the point across, we're mocked, run out of the business, and called risky or toxic. And those labels stick. When I was canceled 2 years ago, I received dozens of messages, support from A-listers that I'd never met, but zero of it publicly. It was all private. In public, everyone agreed I was probably just some racist that deserves what I got. My girlfriend and I had even gotten close with a couple, a husband who was a prominent child actor in the 90s. We were friends. We had couples nights. We would go over to their house. We'd make food, hang out with their kids. We met because he loved my no-hold-barred sense of humor on Twitter. He abandoned us entirely and outright because of what happened to me. No more friendship. No more hangouts. An association with me wasn't worth any heat that he could get for it. That sucks, but those are the breaks of Hollywood, right? I don't know what I want from this thread. I guess I'm just furious with a dude worth $100 million or so who thinks he risks what a guy like me risks when he speaks out. No millionaires had my back. No millionaires reached out to support me, and I know quite a few. And that feeling unifies people on the right. The idea we're all free to believe what we want just doesn't fucking apply to us. There's no standard for behavior, for how we are treated unless we agree with you, so we revolt. We aren't unified under Trump's lies. We don't care about him as a figurehead. We are unified in that you guys want an America that is okay in leaving us behind in pursuit of your vision for the country. Guess what? We're not going anywhere. Name me one conservative celebrity in Hollywood that is still respected and gets work, that isn't mocked incessantly by every other talking head. Go ahead, I'll wait. Being a conservative in this industry today, it's like being gay in the 50s. You'd rather kill yourself than be outed. And you motherfuckers love that. So spare me we're the party of compassion. You're not. You're the party of comply or die. You know that's fascism that you constantly accuse Trump of, right? I've said this several times. It's insanely cowardly to ride the First Amendment to Moneytown and then to close the door behind you for those that don't agree with you. My ideas aren't even that radical. I want a small government. I want to be left alone. I want us to be rid of corruption. And yes, I think we should think about laws and their purpose. And maybe that means we don't justify murdering babies for the convenience of women. This is too many tweets, but here are my final thoughts. I just once love to see celebrities that have profited from free speech grow some fucking balls and defend one person's right to a conservative opinion. Just one. You want an America when we're all free? Publicly back someone that disagrees with you. Have some fucking balls. Stop expecting a trophy for saying the popular shit everyone agrees with. You want a better country? Risk something to reach across the ideological aisle. Apologize for the profanity. When I'm reading, I don't read ahead to know. What's up, Christian? How you doing? And I know, I swear in my real life, but not much. So, but that's the point, right? When you're talking about the idea of risk and bravery, right? So here's the thing, like Norm Macdonald's one of my all-time favorite comedians. Now keep in mind, before people are like, oh, Norm, is he a right-winger? Norm came out and said that Chappelle's newest stand-up, where he was basically endorsing Black Lives Matter, basically pushed him past Richard Pryor is not just one of the most influential comedians of all time, but actually like a civil rights figure. So Norm Macdonald has no dislike for Black Lives Matter or, people that are bringing up these issues. That's not the point of what I'm going to tell you. So he was the host of this show called Last Comic Standing. It's basically, if you've ever seen it, and this was years ago, but it was like, what's the name of that show? American Idol, except it was with comedians. So you had like 10 comedians, and then every week people would vote one off. You know the platform, the stupid shows. And there were 3 judges, him, Roseanne Barr, and someone else that I didn't recognize. And this guy gets up to do stand-up. And his stand-up routine, he's a gay man, and he's doing a stand-up routine bashing the Bible, right? And his routine's like, if you're going to use the Bible that says that me being gay is terrible, then I'm going to use my book to push back, and his book's Harry Potter. Now, keep in mind, I'm someone who defends gay rights, so it's not like I'm offended at his routine. That's not what I'm saying. Anyways, he does his routine. He's like, Psalm something something says this, and Harry Potter, blah, 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 Goblet of Fire, page 76 says this. And he finishes, and, the first judge is like, oh, it was great, and the crowd's all laughing, and Roseanne's like, I thought this was great. And Norm was like, yeah, I don't think it's funny at all. And Roseanne's like, what? He's like, I thought it was terrible. And Roseanne's like, why? He's like, because it's not brave. because you're just pandering to a crowd in Hollywood. And it's popular to bash Christianity here. He's like, if you made these jokes in some Southern Baptist church, it'd be different. That would be edgy. But you didn't. You made them in the one spot where you knew everyone would agree with you. And you think that it makes you edgy, and it doesn't. And he's like, furthermore, if you read Harry Potter and you talked to J.K. Rowling, she says the whole thing was an allegory for Christianity. And Roseanne's like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. And then Norm, after the show, went on to clarify his thoughts, and he's saying exactly what this comedian's saying. It's just like, there's this idea that people pretend to be brave by saying things that they think are edgy, and it's not edgy. If you're saying what everyone else of your contemporary are saying, it's not edgy. And I go back to, I grew up on metal music and punk music, right? And I didn't like a lot of older punk until I was a little older, though the first concert I ever went to was the Dead Kennedys. That was the first show I ever went to. I was probably 16. Then I saw 6 Feet Under, which was like a death metal band. That was my second show. But I went and saw the Dead Kennedys. I was a fan of like the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, the Dead Kennedys, groups like that. When I say fan, I know people that are music fans that are hardcore music fans. I was like a casual fan. I didn't have all the merch. I had a couple CDs, some shirts, things like that. But all my friends were bigger fans of me. But I liked that idea. And I always kind of considered myself a contrarian, which is kind of punk. Which is the idea of like, whatever the establishment seems to be, I tend to be against it. And when Trump was running, or maybe right as he got elected, they talked to Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols on the BBC. And they were like, what do you think of Trump, blah, blah, blah. And Johnny Rotten would be considered like one of the original punks. And he said, in today's world, to be punk means to be a Trump supporter. And they were like, what? And he was like, because everyone in a position of strength in our institutional system hates Donald Trump. And I'm all about being anti-establishment. So that's what it would mean. What's up, Rational? How's Australia? Yeah, man. Dead Kennedys are good stuff. Unfortunately, when I saw the Dead Kennedys, their lead singer, Jello Biafra, there was a restraining... East Bay Ray, the guitar player, and him had restraining orders out against each other, so I saw them with a different singer. But it was still a great show. It really was. Yeah, Johnny Rotten spoke for Trump. End of Johnny Rotten. I'm sure he doesn't care, though. That's probably how he wants it. What's up, 223? Great to see you. So just so everyone knows, I'll be getting off in about 15, 20 minutes because I promised someone I'd play Call of Duty with them. So, but that sort of idea, that's how much the pendulum swung institutionally power-wise. Let me be quite clear. I haven't changed, right? So when I grew up, you heard me talking about religion last night. Again, I think Christian's on here. He just said hi. That I was talking about religion. Like, this was something I didn't tell Christian. So I mentioned that I had a church that I didn't like. And then I went through a spot where I would consider myself was probably an atheist. But even beyond that, I never liked the idea of, like, the censorious right. And I didn't like the idea of, like, back when who was it, like, Tipper Gore, I think it was, and a bunch of religious groups that were trying to, like, censor music. I was against that. Even as a youngster, as a teenager, I was like a free speech enthusiast. Even speech I didn't like. Right? That's who I was. So I was against sort of that. Then there was this guy, Jack something. He was this lawyer, like this religious lawyer, and he was trying to sue the pants off of the entire video game industry. Like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Grand Theft Auto. This dude was always like, we got to sue all the... And I was against that. And that was kind of censorship coming from the right. One of my favorite comedians was Lenny Bruce, right? The story of Lenny Bruce is he was arrested for blasphemy laws all the time because he would show up, particularly in the South, the places that were very religious, and he would tell jokes about the Pope and about Catholics and stuff like that, and they would arrest him. He was taking a real risk. He knew, I'm going to tell this joke and I'm going to get arrested. And it wasn't like, it made his career. Afterwards, people look at him like, wow, that was brave. But that's not what was happening at the time. He was just said, this is my principle, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah, I think Tipper was a Democrat, yeah. I agree with you, Rational. I think Jello probably is like a Ron Paul righty. Yep. I love, like, dude, like, I didn't get a chance to tell Christian this last night. One of my all-time favorite people to watch YouTube videos of is Christopher Hitchens. Huge atheist. Hugely arguing against Christianity and stuff. But he's clever. He's a great debater. You don't have to agree with everything someone says. And Hitchens wasn't saying you didn't have the right to practice religion or anything like that. Though you would hate him if you're a Christian. You would hate him. Because he was smart, he was good at what he did, and he definitely went after Christians and Muslims and any religion. But there's something I respect about people that risk something. And right now, there is no risk. You know, I shouldn't mention his name. So there's someone that helped me with my campaign, and they're a Democrat, right? But they help me because even though I'm a Republican and they're a Democrat, they trust that I'm at least a moral person. And let's be honest, in the district, a Republican's going to win. So you'd rather have if you're a Democrat, you'd rather have a Republican like me, that one of the first things I said I would do was talk to the Democrats and say, just because you didn't vote for me, I still want your input. I still represent you as much as the people that voted for me. So even if I won't change my mind, it's nice to hear what your concerns are. And I truly mean that. I really do. So you'd rather have me than someone that's just like, I ain't going to talk to any Democrat, I guess. Anyways, he flat out admitted to me the other day. We were talking, I said, listen. I said, you don't have to worry about going anywhere in this country and saying, I support Joe Biden. I support Barack Obama. You don't have to worry that you're going to be beaten, shot, bludgeoned. You don't have to worry. The only time you'll ever have to worry is if you help me on a campaign again. Then you better watch your ass. And he said, yeah, I know. And that's the sad truth. That's a Democrat admitting, yeah. That's the reality we're in. You ain't gonna lose your job if you come out and you support Black Lives Matter. Ain't gonna happen. You criticize them, but we have to pretend they're brave, and that's the thing. That's the control of language. These institutions are so powerful. They play this is a theme that you've seen. There is power. David on Twitter says, or Twitch says, I don't even have a job to lose. Nice one, bro. Says the tough guy trolling on a Twitch stream. Yeah, bro, you don't have a job. Good stuff. No, I'm not mad. Also, let's be honest, if you were going to call me some sort of baked good, cupcake's probably not the one I would choose. I think I'm a little bigger than that. But that's the society we live in. I talked about this a long time ago when we saw on campuses. You remember there was this incident at Yale. I believe it was at Yale. And what had happened was you had a man and woman that were married that were both professors on campus. And the man, I don't know what this was. I don't know exactly how it works there. But apparently they have teachers that live in the dorms, or they're like kind of like a RA supervisor, so they're in charge of several floors of dorms. So the man was a professor that was that, and then the woman was just a professor. And the woman wrote an article that was like, maybe we should kind of pull back on this whole Halloween costume thing, that you're immoral and need to be canceled if you wear the wrong Halloween costume. Maybe it's just people having fun and we shouldn't freak out about it, right? And so she said that, and the campus went nuts. And there was this video that went viral of her husband then in the quad talking to a bunch of students. Though that's not really true. What happened was they surrounded and screamed at him. And there's this girl screaming in a really shrill voice saying, you don't care, but you don't understand. This is my life. This is my home. I live here. You can't threaten me like this. Remember, the threat was saying, you shouldn't freak out over Halloween costume. That was perceived as a threat to her. Now, what happened in that situation was this. That's someone attending Yale. When we talk about privilege, if you're born in the United States, you're already... And if you're alive now and you were born in the United States and you're relatively healthy, like you weren't born with a crippling, debilitative disease, you're amongst the most 99%... lucky people that have ever lived. The bulk of human history has been painful and hard. If you're alive today in the United States, even if you're poor, you're in a way better shot than almost everyone that's been born in human history. Even people that are born now. Our poverty in this country compared to poverty in other countries around the world, it's night and day. But if you're at Yale, you are amongst the most privileged people that have ever lived. You are going to be a mover and shaker, guaranteed. Now, if you talk to postmodernists even and people on the left, you understand there are privileges, and there are privileges to every group. So even being underprivileged comes with privileges. And a lot of it has to do with the camaraderie that you get, kind of embracing your status as being underprivileged. For example, you see kind of this idea, I think it makes sense to look at it in the UK. You know, like, I love British accents, but there's the sort of the kind of upper class British accent, and then there's the, like, soccer hooligan British accent. The way they talk and stuff like that, that's kind of a privilege. They have that. That's part of who they are. It's like, you might be the lowest person at your company pushing a broom, but at least you get to complain about that you're pushing a broom. That's what you got, right? Well, these most privileged people, they ain't happy with that deal. They want what you got. They're not happy having almost everything. They need everything. So they want the money, they want the power, they want the education, they want to be in all the positions of dominance, and they want to claim to be the victim. They have to have it all. And that's real power. That's what Black Lives Matter is. They act like no one hears them. No institution. It's all institutional bigotry against them. Every institution in the country totally agrees with them. That is actually a good joke, David. He says women are privileged in comparison to you. They have better access to supportive brassiers than you do. I wear tight shirts up top. It helps support just fine, thank you. But that's actually a good joke. I like that. I saw that in St. Louis, a black cop killed yesterday. Unreal. Terrible. Yeah, I'll give it to the chat troll for that. That's a good one. I say that all the time. I don't mind people picking on me. Just make it funny. That's a good one. I'll read that out. But that's what we see happening. All these... You notice almost everyone that talks about privilege and the problem with privilege is very privileged themselves. Did you ever notice that? It's like most of the people burning stuff down are white suburban people that drove into the inner city. Most of the people in the inner city, this is true. Most of the blacks in the inner city are like, we don't want you here. Get out. Stop burning down our town. We live in such a backward world that me saying, I don't want to see a bunch of white suburban people go into the inner city and burn it down, I'm the racist for thinking that. If I don't support suburban whites going into the inner city and burning it down, I'm a racist. It's the same people that looks at Rittenhouse and say he's a mass murderer, but they look at the Antifa guy and said he killed a fascist, it's okay. It's the same people in the New York Times that wrote of the Black Hebrew Israelites, well, yeah, they're a hateful group, but they're not as bad as wearing a MAGA hat. So an organization that's actually out there that's had one of their chapters involved in 14 murders, that has been involved in violence and intimidation the country over, they're not as big of a threat as someone wearing a red ball cap with this political slogan on it. Emotionally hurting someone's not against the law. If it was, everyone would be locked up because every one of us have emotionally hurt someone. So no, that's not a threat. If I threaten you with violence, that's a threat worth taking seriously. D. Goodlog says, remember when all those white nationalists attacked that old lady in a wheelchair who was defending our business? Oh, wait. No, that was Black Lives Matter, of course. So, yeah. It went in a weird direction, this show today, and I do have to get off here soon. But what I was trying to hit home today, even though we started talking about white privilege and kind of those types of ideas, what I was talking about was kind of the double standard that we see from Joe Biden in the media. If you take one thing from the show, it's this. I don't care who you argue with, left or right. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care how intelligent someone you're arguing with is. I don't care how sincere Kamala Harris and Joe Biden sound. Here's all you need to know. Law enforcement locked up people for rioting, for burning down buildings and things like that. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden helped bail out those criminals. And so to now say, oh, no, burning things down and looting and rioting is wrong, and we condemn it, and we'll fight back against it. Those are cheap words, and their actions were that they bailed those people out. That's it. That's the end of the argument. And then the other thing is, remember how the media acted after Charlottesville. Trump didn't specifically condemn, and people say, no, he said good people. One, he didn't. The way you think that he said that's a lie, because he said there were good people on both sides, and then specifically clarified, I'm not talking about the racist and the neo-Nazis. So he didn't say Nazis were good people. And second, that was in his third speech. The first speech where he just said, I condemn all violence and racism and hatred and bigotry needs to end in this country, that wasn't good enough for the media. They had to keep asking, you didn't specifically condemn the KKK. You didn't specifically condemn neo-Nazis. So how'd they treat Joe Biden today in his 12-minute teleprompter speech that he barely made it through? When he didn't say, I condemn Antifa. Right, Smashing Barrel. He did say that there were good people on both sides. He did not say Nazis were good people. He said there were good people on both sides, and I'm not talking about the Nazis and the white supremacists. So no, he never called a Nazi or a white supremacist a good person. Ever. Not once. He specifically said those people aren't good people. Oh, we have a great one on the hook. So Smashing Barrel on Twitch says, when you compare Antifa to the KKK, smiley face. Yeah, you're right. How many people have the KKK shot and murdered this year? I'll wait. How many cities have the KKK burned down this year? How many shopkeepers have they burnt down? How many people have died as a result of KKK riots this year? He did not specifically say that at all. LMAO, you dum-dum. Yeah, he said exactly what I said. This year, oof. What is that supposed to mean? How many people did the KKK kill last year? Again, it's ironic. So we want to talk about if that's what the game's going to be, if the game's that, fair enough, let's do it. We could talk about the zebra killings that occurred in the late 70s, where you actually had black supremacists like those in Louis Farrakhan's group that killed up to 47 people. They took ears and heads as trophies. The younger the white person that you killed, the more points you got in an honor system that they had. Oh, you probably never heard of that story because they're still talking about the KKK, the Democrats KKK that used to lynch people. I agree, they were incredibly heinous, the Democrat KKK that lynched people. I agree with that. So we still go back to that boogeyman and we ignore the fact that we've had one group of people burning down cities, one group of people that has total institutional support. Who supports the KKK? No one. Compare them both for the past 150 years. What sense does that make? Now, this is always the argument that you see the left making. We have to justify heinous hatred and extremism today from one side because of stuff that happened 100 years ago. So it's okay to be racist today. It's okay to support a group like Antifa. It's okay to support black supremacists. All of that's okay because of Jim Crow and slavery. Right, and Luke's exactly right. The Democrats weren't the KKK. You're a liar. The Democrats were the KKK. They absolutely were. You could call them Southern Dixiecrats. They called themselves Democrats. They voted Democrats. They caucused with the Democrats. They were Democrats. That's who they were. They were the party that was focused on race then. They were the party that fought against ending slavery. And they're the party focused on race and causing racial division now. That's who the Democrats have always been. So, all right, I got to get moving. I would love to stay. So I will probably be on tomorrow. But I'm glad to see we have Antifa defenders in the chat. Thank you so much. Hopefully you could listen and learn something to understand that this sort of extremism is wrong. It doesn't matter if you think the KKK is worse than Antifa. Both are hate-filled groups. The standard that the left and the media put on Trump was he has to specifically... It's not enough for him to specifically say, I'm against racist groups like the KKK. It's not enough for him to say that. If he even said good people on both sides. Even though he specifically said he wasn't talking about the KKK. That's not good enough. But Joe Biden doesn't have to condemn Antifa that just murdered someone. Doesn't have to condemn them. I don't care. They were still Democrats. The whitewashing of history is insanity. They weren't Democrats. Even though they were Democrats, they were Southern Democrats. What was that again? Southern what? Oh, Southern Democrats. Wow. How about that? They weren't Democrats. They were Southern Democrats. Leave it to the left to throw an adjective or an adverb and claim that that distorts reality then. Unreal. It doesn't matter if the parties flipped in the 60s. The parties flipped again. The Democrats are now the party of judging people by the color of their skin and not the context of their, or not the content of their character. The fact is that we could still look and act like the KKK has the power they did when they were the Democrats is laughable. And then we use that to deflect when we actually see black supremacy. Like, we have to say, oh, well, we can't look at what Antifa and Black Lives Matter have done this year. Let's compare them to the history of 150 years. Stupid. It's nonsense. RUPs are so bad that they voted against racial equality. Who's voting against Proposition 209 right now in California that says that the government should not be allowed to discriminate or give preferential treatment to a group based on race, gender, religion? Who's voting against that? Who is it? So I love the irony of this. So here's the irony of what we're saying. We can't go back 50 years to look at what the Republicans and Dems were. We have to go back 20 years, but we can't look at today either at what they are. So it's just, we have to look at a little sliver of time. We can't, to me it makes sense that we would just look at what the parties are today. Which party's voting against civil rights legislation? Oh, it's the Democrats. That's who's doing it. But we can't look at that. We have to go back 15 years ago. And then I'm like, well, if we're going to go back 15, why can't we go back 50? No, we can't do that either. Just 15. There are questions against the party flipping thing as well. Matthew Meyer, who's a good troll that I love to have come in from YouTube. Thanks again for supporting my viewership. Of course, he likens someone that's issued self-defense as a mass murderer. So what Matthew Meyer would like for you is he doesn't want the police there for you, and you're not allowed to defend yourself. And he probably thinks that Kyle Rittenhouse was obligated to get beat to death by a skateboard while that other guy shot at him. That's what he feels the obligation for Matthew Meyer was. And so therefore, he can't come on and say anything about Antifa that just killed a Trump supporter for being a Trump supporter. He has to pretend like a person running away who is being attacked with gunshots being fired, that person shooting is worse somehow than people literally hunting Trump supporters from Antifa. Oh, but I'm sure he's the same person that probably said Antifa didn't exist and they don't do anything bad in the first place. Oh, and yeah, here we go. And I will leave us on this note. Smashing Barrel would like you to know. To claim that Antifa is the same as KKK, even though Antifa is about fighting fascism. There's the intellectual juggernauts we're up against. Is this Chris Cuomo? They call themselves Antifa. Clearly they're against fascism. They're beating people to silence them through political intimidation for their beliefs. They're cheering for killing people based on their political affiliation. That's not anti-fascism, that's fascism. But they call themselves anti-fascists, so they must be anti-fascist. Black Lives Matter calls themselves Black Lives Matter, so they must be for Black Lives. The KKK is going to change their name to the We Love Puppies group. And then you'll be like, how could you be against that? Don't you love puppies? Yes, they didn't kill him for being a Trump supporter. He was part of Patriot Prayer being far right. And, one, that's not true. It's far right by the definition of the far left. Antifa thinks that Rand Paul's far right. Second, even if that was the case, so they hunted and killed someone for his political beliefs. And that's fascism. And then he says, oh no, the fascists are being killed with a bunch of funny emojis. And then says, poor Whitey. And there you go. It doesn't matter if Matthew Meyer says, by the way, just so you know, everyone, there we have someone making fun of the Trump supporter that was just killed. So there's your tolerant left. And these people truly think that they're more moral than you. They're the scum of the earth. They're the biggest crybaby. They claim that they're perpetual victims and that they need to fight the man. And then they say, but that gives us the right to go out and murder people that we disagree with. They're the biggest scumbags that you could ever imagine. They're worthless. They have no intellectual argument. They claim a faux sense of moral superiority. They want the country to burn. And just like we said, they think that they're doing something funny, but all you're doing every time someone like you opens your mouth, Smashing Barrel, all you do is increase votes for Trump. I assume you're probably a Trump supporter. Because it's true, there are so many people out there. There are hundreds of thousands of people that think just like you. He was white, he deserved to die. He was a Trump supporter, he was far right, he deserved to die. Oh, wow, we're going to cry for him. That's fine. Please be open. Get a megaphone. Come on the show. Please talk all your beliefs. We'll record them. We'll try to get it out there. Bring your friends. Let everyone know how you truly feel. I really like it. Matthew Meyer wants to know if it was my kid, if I would have left Kyle out there. Probably not. But he is 17. I might not have had a choice. At that point, he's basically a young adult. If he wants to leave, what would I do? He's not a murderer. From available evidence, I'm willing to see more evidence, but he's someone that committed self-defense. The fact that you call him a murderer proves that you think he was obligated to be beaten to death, which you're fine with. You don't care. The only difference between Kyle and the Trump supporter that was stopped the other day was that Kyle ran away and fought for his life when he was being attacked. You think that he should have been murdered. So thank you, Matthew Meyer, for also showing the extremism that comes on the left. So, all right, everyone, gotta head out. Thanks so much. I won't be on here. I'll probably do a live stream tomorrow night. I'm not sure. But tomorrow and Wednesday will probably be the last ones, and then I'll have to head out because I'm going on vacation. So thank you so much. If you want to support me, please like and subscribe. Check me out on some form of Normal America or Normal America with Rob Noor on YouTube, DLive, and Twitch. So you can check me out on those platforms. I know someone got in touch with me about life insurance. I'll try to get back to you, whoever emailed me. But if you'd like life insurance, send me an email at rob.noor@gmail.com. We can talk about it. And all right, thanks so much, everyone. You guys are the best. Even the people that are Antifa fans that think that defending yourself makes you a murderer, but hunting and killing someone because they have political disagreements with you is a great thing. Even those people, thank you for being here. I hope that you never get the karma that you deserve. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one.